Welcome, ghouls, ghoulettes, and guesties to GonstFM Off Air, the official podcast companion to 66.6 GonstFM, the internet radio station dedicated to the band Ghost and the wider Gonst community. I'm Papa X.
And I'm Uncle Ghoul.
And we are back with our second entry into our Masks of the Evil One series, where we are diving into the masks of each Papa and some of the costuming for each Papa, as well as the ghouls themselves. And where we last left off was the Opus Eponymous era, and we are diving right into the Infestissumam era. Anthony and I would like to preface the fact that, like, there's some stuff to talk about, but probably not as much. And I would dare say that this is the most documented yet undocumented of the mask itself.
Yeah, we kind of get to an era where the budget got bigger. They're signed to a major label now, and I have to imagine more NDAs were signed. And things became much more kind of secretive to keep the illusion up. We're no longer in store-bought stuff territory anymore. It's now like where this stuff came from is really probably signed under NDAs by the label, of where that came from. This era starts off with a iconic show, right, with that handoff, which technically, if you think of it in these terms, the first show of this era was Papa 2 with the old ghouls, the Opus ghouls, costume-wise.
Yeah. Which it's not much of a big change ghoul-wise.
No.
In fact, the more things change, the more they stay the same with the Nameless ghouls on that front with this era.
And Papa, really.
Yeah.
Like, Papa's face changes, but the costumes don't. They change colors and some of the designs a little bit, but really it seems like as we mentioned last week, the last versions, those white robes, the white cassocks and bata masks and the white chasuble stay the same. They just kind of all turned black. So it was like they were prototypes almost. And I wonder if they were, actually. I started thinking about it. Like, I wonder if that was a prototyping kind of testing for this era, because it is pretty much spot on. I mean, the ghouls, for example, we'll talk about it, we can get into it, are the same. They are exactly the same, just black. It is the same robes, the same masks, pretty much, just now black instead of white. And we really get to see those element signs off a little more.
There's like a thicker lapel. The crucifix is a little more gaudy. But hey, at least it doesn't look like they're wearing potato sacks over their faces with the holes punched out. And they're just sitting there like, what the fuck, bro?
And the black is a little less controversial than the white.
Yes.
Absolutely. To piggyback off that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we get this cool show of like, what a cool reveal of these costumes, right? Because we actually do learn from a fan. It's according to Martin, it was his girlfriend as Papa 1. It was Martin's girlfriend as Papa 1 at that show, I believe, is what I read. And Papa 1 comes out and hands the mic over to Papa 2.
And that's also where we've gotten the Secundo nickname for Papa 2, because it's Papa Emeritus Secundo. And then he just jumps right in.
Which, is such a badass moment in the history there. And it's cool because it's one of my favorite things because, the mask for Papa 1 clearly doesn't fit very well. It looks really scrunched and the miter is falling onto his head.
Dude, you're being way too nice about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's just...
trying to be professional here.
Yes, but at the same time, it looks fucked up.
Yeah.
He comes out looking like so fucked up, like a scrunkled creature. And like, he hands the mic over. I feel like you can see the miter slipping down over like the eyes.
He looks like droopy. It's like, here's your mic, sir.
Yeah, and I think that mask was just gone. Like, it was rotted out. It's just it's one of the funniest, but also cool moments. And then we have this really, one thing I'll note about it too is we get the first look at Papa 2, and he has this much more skeletal kind of mask, right? It's very clearly everything still bald, skin painted black with the white, as opposed to Papa 1 where, the top of his head is still skin tone. He's all, painted. He's painted his whole head, essentially to cover that bald melon. But it's much more skeletal and angular and evil looking, right? Like, it's a much more defined, you can tell there's a professional quality to it.
It has cheekbones. You know, like that's the kind of like detail that I'm thinking is like whenever the jawline paint goes in,
It's
you
very
can
gaunt.
Yeah, there's definition there, you know?
I remember the first time I saw it, I didn't realize that it was still supposed to be a man in face paint. I thought it was an actual skull. Like he was supposed to be a skull person. And it's not that I thought that, it was just bad video quality, but especially like it's a very gaunt old man, like sunken in eyes and kind of, you know, and when we get to the unmasked, you know, version of it that we see unmasked, you see that even more. It's just this very gaunt old man, you know, rumored to be modeled after Anton LaVey. Don't think there was ever any like actual backing for that. I think fans just assume that was the case. I can sort of see it, but I see there's other things I see more than that. But you know, the fandom will always bring that up as a fun fact. But I don't think anyone ever full on said that was the thing for that. But it's cool. It's a cool look, and we got this more professional. The first time now, we're not a store-bought Halloween mask. It's a professional made mask by a professional company.
Done by Wayne Toth Effects. And if anybody out there listening has heard that name, if you don't know it from Ghost, you probably know it from Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2.
And also tons of props for Alice Cooper, Danzig, the Misfits, the Joey Ramone Memorial Sculpture. He also did recently the Munsters, the Rob Zombie Munsters, all the prosthetics and stuff for that and effects. Or most of them. Really talented artists. And I believe he had a shop in LA for years. If he doesn't already, that had displays and stuff and did a lot of display work for haunted houses and things of that nature. Really cool dude. Really kind of secretive with his stuff. He doesn't do interviews, doesn't do a lot. There's not a lot you can kind of gather on him. But one thing I did learn from Jerry Constantine, who did the mask later on, is that once Ghost came to him, there was already a life cast made of Tobias. So I assume that was done by Wayne. I'm assuming that at that point, because you have to make a life cast to make a silicone mask. So I have to imagine that was done then. So we can imagine that probably in 2012, you know, when they're in production for this record, Tobias gets life casted in LA. Most likely they began the process of making this mask, and we get it by early 2013 or late 2012, December, right?
Right.
So it's interesting to think about that kind of turnaround there of them working on that, you know?
Ghost had hella turnaround for the first 3 albums. Yeah. I mean, and probably up to Prequel, I would say. Like, they had, like, massive, like, quick turnaround.
But even Prequel was a really quick, like, last show was in September of 2017, and by April, they're back on the road. In comparison to the, you know, turnarounds we had in this last cycle, and the cycle before that, especially with the pandemic, that was a fast turnaround, because by the end, by promoting of, I hate to jump away from this, but by the promoting of Ceremony and Devotion, they were already teasing the next frontman, you know, so they were on that quick. But yeah, you know, and you can see in lawsuit documents them discussing the album Infestissumam and them working on it, you know, and Tobias's name that he wanted for it, and the disagreements from the band members and things, and it's a fun era. But you know, they talk about the stage backdrop and stuff at that time, and for the second album, and so I'm sure the mask was being discussed in 2012 a lot too, and upgrading that, you know.
There's not too many variations of it. Like, you know, there's some color variation that happens to it. And then, you know, of course, the infamous paintless Papa for the propaganda series that Noisy produced. And dude.
Your Zero video and appearances and all that. Yep.
Yeah. But I think this Papa, I feel like this may be the most evil looking Papa. Even though Papa Emeritus I is supposed to be like the most evil Papa, Papa 2 is a mean looking son of a bitch.
It's also, I think, the most iconic. And I know some people might disagree with me, but if you think about it, it's still being used on every merch item. And even memes, you know, you think of, I think a lot of us, I don't know, even if you don't know Ghost, have probably seen like the y'all motherfuckers need Satan meme that was really popular on the internet and around that time. For like metalheads to share on, you know, Facebook, or people to, you know, under Jesus posts or whatever. And it's a photo of Papa 2 at Coachella. And that meme, I know a lot of people got into the band through that meme. Or, you know, just hearing the Year Zero intro and then finding that, you know, even before it got big on TikTok, I know a lot of people were hearing that in meme compilations, or, you know, just like, oh, this is the song, the Satan band. Yeah. They really blew up in this era. So I think that for a lot of reasons, this look is so, and it really is the perfect Papa look to me. I probably say that a lot, and maybe I've said that a bunch of times, but it's just so evil, but realistic looking at times. It's just, you really buy the character that this is an old man putting on that paint. And, it's not too complex. It's also not too simple. It's just a really well designed look that's really clean and angular and evil. And it's like, as a Kiss fan, you think of these designs that people can do on their own face and are iconic and that will forever be remembered. And this is one of them. It's just such a great design.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, this is when Tobias started just leaving ears off of the mask, because it's his ears just painted.
Yeah.
When he remembered to paint them, I should say.
And and there's that's true. And it also started the trend, which still gets carried on through Papa 4, especially, of painting the ears, painting them white. I think, Cardinal doesn't have that, obviously, and then 3 sometimes had it. He had it for like the first couple of shows, but that we'll get into it. But it's an interesting kind of thing there. But also with that, there's a practical reason for that too, of course, right? Of in-ear monitors, much easier, having those open. And so technically speaking, it is a silicone mask as far as we know. And that's kind of an interesting thing, is we don't fully know, because it was some information. It was commonly believed to have been foam latex, like we talked about last week. And for those who don't know, the difference between foam latex and silicone is that foam latex does rot. And it's a really soft material. Well, silicone, in theory, should not rot. It can rip, it can tear, it can have a lot of damage. But if you take care of it, it shouldn't degrade. Potentially, it might, years and years down the line. But there are props from the 1970s made of silicone that still are in perfect condition.
Right. And if you guys out there listening want to see what a mask looks like when it rots, I can give you a good example. Go search up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 animatronic heads.
Yeah.
Today.
Yes.
They are fucked up looking.
Which are made of foam latex.
Yeah.
There's also another one is Slimer from Ghostbusters. He showed up to like some event in like the 90s, and like as soon as they opened the box, it just crumbled. And so they later auctioned off like pieces of like Slimer dust of the puppet, and all that's left in like I think the archives is like the metal frame, because it just crumbled when they touched it.
The Slimer dust. God.
But it's funny because for years you could buy for like 10 grand a finger that was like left from it, because like it was like people like parted off the parts that rotted away, and just like, which I think is really funny. But like if you Google foam latex props after years, or like any of the like Michael Myers masks, or any of these things, they will look horrifying. Yeah. But the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a great one. Silicone doesn't have that problem. It'll last, and it mimics human skin beautifully. It has that glisten. It has that texture, that motion. It's what we use in special effects, especially for more high-tech animatronics, when you see those really advanced like Disney animatronics or creatures in movies now. It's just heavy, so it doesn't get used as a lot for a lot of applications, because it's a heavy material that's very dense, as opposed to like a lightweight foam latex with air bubbles and stuff in it.
Is it just me, or with Papa 2, the mouth moves a little bit better with this mask? Like a lot better.
Yeah, I believe part of that reason is it's cast thin. That would be my guess. Is there's a thing we have in silicone mask making where we use something called power mesh. I say we as if I'm making them. I'm just very interested in them, and I have made them before, but not often. I do special effects on the side as just a hobby. But power mesh is a mesh that goes all throughout. It's basically think like mesh pantyhose that would get put over a core, and then the mold goes on top and silicone fills it, and it encapsulates that mesh core inside and gives strength to the silicone. This works well for keeping strength on the mask so it doesn't rip, but it also makes the movement a little bit less stretchy, so it doesn't move as well. Because there's no gluing in these masks, which some people might not think of. You're not gluing it to your face like a prosthetic. It just slips on, and friction is what causes all of that movement. These masks, I believe, and there's certain ones, you'll see this throughout the history of watching Ghost Masks. Watch, especially the chapters. And I'll use a good example here, jumping ahead in era. Chapter 1. Cardinal's mouth moves a lot more than the next time we see him. When we see him in the one where Sister's in the hospital, then his mouth barely moves. But it does move pretty well in that first chapter and in the Rats video. Reason being, you can cast silicone really thin, and there is a technique of where you will not use the mesh around the mouth. So that way, you'll cut out that mouth area so that it's thin casting there. Like you'll scoop some out so it's thinner there, so that there's less, weight and it will just move better. Or sometimes around the eyes it's done too, and around areas where you want a lot of movement. One thing that was noted when the Papa 3 mask was put into the hands of fans was that has a very thin casting in the face, while the rest of the head is very thick silicone.
Right.
And that's, I'm guessing, why. But that has its own issues because that is prone to ripping. So I believe that later on, to kind of prevent that, they began using masks that were more all around thick, which stopped the movement, but they lasted longer on tour.
Right. And the Papa 2 mask in question also, I believe, is the first, now correct me if I'm wrong here, is the first to go below the neck, like where it does, there's no cutoff. Yep. Like it rests on
down the shoulders.
Yeah, I was going to say it rests on the collarbone or the shoulder area, and there's some chest on it too, a little bit. So, which helps with the new costumes and stuff.
They have a bib, as we call it. And that is and it's funny, it's really funny, but that's the term. A bib and then a lip cup, typically, which is a little piece that goes over your bottom lip to help movement. And his might have had a lip cup, but I don't know if that impacted vocals.
Yeah, man, Papa 2 is just a bad son of a bitch, man. And he might be the only Papa that didn't have too much of a wardrobe change. Like, what you saw is what you got. And, until he did the paintless mask with the suit.
The implied,
Yeah, which I don't know
which
if you
is
want.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know if you wanted to get into that one just yet, but
I do.
Yeah, okay,
it's one
so
of my favorites.
Me too. There's the performance, the studio performance where like he's got the shades and the headphones with the ghouls, and I think it's like 2 or 3 songs that they play. And
Music Feed Studios, I think.
Yeah, man, it's great. That's a great performance, by the way. Anybody out there listening, if you haven't actually seen that, which I'd be surprised if you haven't, but if you're new to this band and you're still kind of discovering old Ghost, that's an iconic performance. At least in our fandom, it's very iconic. Papa 2 is just exuding old man swagger, a full-blown mustache, which I think is hilarious because like he's got the mustache on point right there. And he looks clean shaven, in his paint. And I like to talk about how that is the Cesar Romero Joker look, how he just paints over the fucking mustache.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny because you always see him in these sunglasses because, there's no way to disguise the eye paint except for a couple shots in like blurry shots in Propaganda. But one thing I think we do have to talk about it because I don't know if people know this watching out there, but he wore that a lot. That was one of his most worn looks for appearances. If you went to a record signing or a in-store experience at like a record shop or a meet and greet or anything, a good majority of the time he's wearing that mask. That was the preferred one. He wore a couple of times he'd be in full regalia, especially if they had a show that day. But most of the time that he was appearing at a record store or some type of video series, that was how he was presenting himself. Was that suit and that mask, the flesh tone mask, which is the same sculpt, same mask, just painted flesh tone, the mustache added, and I believe eyebrows to it, because the original one didn't have eyebrows. Sometimes it did, but that's all. They would fall off. They were just glued on. But yeah, that is an iconic shot. But the issue was that people at the time didn't make the connection that it was the same character. And even Tobias talked about that recently in that last interview he did where he talked about the characters, how people didn't make the connection that it was the same guy. And so it was kind of flawed in that way. But it's interesting because he's the only Papa besides Cardinal, I get, not even, who just doesn't wear face paint because Cardinal still has the black around his eyes even when he's, frater or, just lounging as Papa 4 in the new chapters. But that time that was just him with no face paint, which is really interesting. It's kind of a cool thing. And it's a special era of where like nowadays, you wouldn't see that 1 and 2. It was like they were trying to convince you that this was a different guy. They really committed to the bit of him having this mask. Like, oh, this is him without the face paint. You know?
Because they do show him looking in the mirror in the flesh tone mask, applying the face paint, which I thought was a really nice touch.
And then you'll notice one of my favorite things is that it wasn't always like this, but some of the masks he couldn't reach the top of his head. So it would be flesh tone faded of like the paint. And that's all not actual grease paint. This is painted silicone. Nothing sticks to silicone but silicone. So when you see any changes in the paint, it is a new mask. So that means that when that artist, whether it was Wayne or someone on his staff, was painting that mask, they painted it in a way to where it was flesh tone And then they made it look like face paint that, he couldn't reach his head or he couldn't reach the back of his neck. And, it's just a cool touch that adds realism there or there's just a couple spots on his neck where the flesh tone is showing through. That really sells that illusion. It's just the artistry of that is cool.
Yeah, I don't like it when it's too perfect, which we'll definitely discuss that when we get into the Impera cycle. But I don't like, especially like with the illusion, that we're trying to be sold, especially in this time when we didn't know, we knew, but we didn't know. You know what I mean? Like, it still looks like he's applied it. There's a way that I'm trying to describe like the face paint on Papa 2 where it looks almost powdered. Like, how you put like a powdered finish over it looks like that. And I love that. It looks
and it's got smudgies, little imperfections and one of my favorite things about this character in general is there's a specific mask that he has. And I'm going to briefly refer to my notes to remember exactly when this was used towards the end of the cycle. All of the white has turned gray.
That's what I was about to like kind of talk about. Not necessarily that it's turned gray, but to kind of piggyback off of the powdered look or whatever. I like that when you see certain shots of Papa 2, it doesn't look like, Papa 1, there's just black and then there's white, but the white is like really fucking white. This looks like the white was painted over the black because you could still see the black like kind of poking through in splotches on the paint, which again leads to the imperfect look of 2.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets progressively dirtier. It gets to this point where there's a show or they do in Sweden. I don't remember which one it was. It was at the same place that they did the show where Papa 3 was pulled off stage. And they do a show there and you can see it there. It's a performance of Here Comes the Sun that's on YouTube. Of Papa 2 performing Here Comes the Sun. Everyone probably knows what I'm talking about. It's like almost pro shot. I think it just says like Ghost 2014. Here Comes the Sun. Google that and you'll find it and you'll know which one I'm talking about. It is disgusting looking in the best way. Like it is like, and also Sweden Rock. We call it the Sweden Rock mask in the community sometimes because you can see it on the Sweden Rock cover where it is just this, the white is completely gray. It's smudged all over in some areas. It just looks so evil and dirty and gross. That to me is like, for me, the quintessential. And when I see people cosplaying Papa 2, a lot of the times I see people with that mask. There's a great mask maker out there who does replicas, Walter QP, over in Peru. And a lot of people buy masks from him. And most of the ones he's doing is that gray look. And it's something about it. I don't know. I can never not stop looking at it, because it feels real. Like it's like, he's sweating and it's dripping over it and it's, maybe touched up and he's putting the white over the black and, it's turning this grayish color, but it's not just that it's gray. It's that there's variations. Like some parts it's white, some parts it's like, it's all gradients. There's so much effort into it. It looks so cool.
Yeah. And the other thing about Papa 2 and the mask that I enjoy a lot too is there's so many wrinkles, like skin wrinkles. It's not like, the mask has wrinkles, it's
because of that effect, the paint seeps into these wrinkles.
It's the most, like if you Google any of the Papa 2 images and you find the ones that Anthony and I are talking about, this one I think is my favorite for a multitude of reasons. It's the one, and I think the best way to describe it is exactly this. It's the picture of Papa 2 where he looks like he's getting his portraits taken at Kmart. He's got like that green, he's got that green backdrop and he's looking off. And I made a meme about this of this last year where it's him staring off, but then it's another picture of him looking in another direction where it's like it's kind of half-assed, like faded into like the top back of it. But I love that picture because I feel like that one may very well be one of the photos of him that shows that kind of wrinkly detail in his face, because you can see where like the cheek like and the lip lines are like in the corners of his mouth, and you can see when he's making like a squinched like look with his eyebrows, and the forehead wrinkle is coming from underneath the miter.
He also, you can see it in some shots especially, but he would paint, in canon or lore or whatever, he would paint his wrinkles. Like, especially on his forehead, his upper forehead. I don't know.
Yeah.
He would paint, from, you frown, you get those lines on your forehead around in between your eyes. He would put a thin lane there's a thin, like, it's part of the face paint coming out of his eye, the black. I call it like the Jack Skellington that shape of like an oval that's been cut with that angly like evil eye.
Yeah.
Where it's permanently mad, and you get those brows. He'd paint that evil so it was always there. It's such a cool little thing. It's awesome. We're looking at photos as we're talking to cross reference, but yeah, it's that look of it's phenomenal. He's got that one line that goes over the bridge of his nose, and then one line coming up from his right eye over his top brow, and then one coming down from the mitre. That kind of it's a really cool little detail to it that just he would put the paint, and also down by his mouth, coming off of his smile lines, he would put black paint coming in from there too. So and also from the eyes. I'm looking at the photo now and I noticed it more and more, even from out of the eyes. There's black paint, kind of like Heath Ledger's Joker, where that black paint comes out of his eyes and into his wrinkles of his smile lines and everything.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. He would accentuate those for that evil quality. And I think that's so cool.
One thing I wanted to bring up earlier and I totally forgot it until just now, as far as the costuming of Papa 2 goes, this motherfucker had the crucifix staff, the bow staff.
Yes, yeah, he did, and he didn't use the thurible often,
right?
Like other papas. More often than not, if you watch, it's an interesting interview with Tobias, and he talks about how I don't think we've ever done Conclavi Condillo without the thurible, and we couldn't use it. And I was like, most of the Infestissumam cycle, you didn't. It's really funny to me that you forgot that, because if you watch, and I've watched hundreds of shows, I saw them on that cycle a couple times, and he rarely used it. It's such an iconic thing of Conclavi Condillo, but that was usually so early in the set that he would still, usually the second song or third, he would still have the staff in his hand from Paraspera and the intro. So he would come out with that and that commanding presence there, and he would use that throughout, the other songs.
The only Papa to have one.
Yeah. I mean, I know others have been pictured in artwork and stuff, interpretations by, fan arts and things. Which is interesting, right? Because it's imagery that's used a lot in Ghost, even on Skeletor, right?
Yep.
On the cover is that a Papa has a staff, but only Papa 2 has one. And unless you count the one that Papa 1 has on that Metal Hammer cover, but that's not a Ghost staff. It's just a generic staff that's a regular upright side cross,
Yeah.
But it's such a cool little aspect to him. And then, of course, we can't not touch upon his costume getting stolen.
Yeah, again, for anybody out there that's just getting into this band, and congratulations on discovering this band, by the way.
Absolutely.
There's
Welcome to the craziness.
right? There's a lot of mishap and fuckery abound, which we'll get into more of mishaps.
We'll get into that for sure next episode.
Yeah, because old bumbling Terzo himself, but we love that boy. But Papa 2,
and the multiple masks. But anyways,
Papa 2 had his shit just yoinked. What the fuck even was his?
We know where it is to this day.
Right?
I don't think they know what happened. Yeah, the show in Mexico, 2013. The costumes were stolen with no time to find a replacement. They just kind of had to improvise on the makeshift one.
Bro, he may as well have been wearing a potato sack at that point. It was kind of they fumbled it so bad. Poor guy.
And it's an interesting thing, right? Because I look at this, and one thing that's interesting is you have to think that this was last minute, right? But look at what he's wearing. It doesn't look like something that was rush shopped. It does look rush shopped to me, but at the same time, the stole he's wearing has embossed crucifixes on it, which makes me wonder if this was an unused costume that they just had or something, because I can't imagine that they had a way on the road in Mexico last minute, unless it was a local costume maker who had a rush job, to emboss the logo on, his costume, which is what's really interesting, because it's very clearly pulled together, but there are things on it that are very professionally done, but just mismatched.
Yeah.
And I've kind of always wondered the story behind that, because it's simultaneously, I'll be honest, really bad looking. But at the same time, there are things, where it's oh, I wonder how they got that done. Because it's not it's just painted on. The mask is interesting too, because it's not the same sculpture at all. If I had to bet, it's just a generic silicone mask that was probably sourced, or even maybe a latex one from a Halloween store or something. And he did his best to paint the paint onto it himself. And clearly didn't know how.
That poor fucking hairline. And I say hairline, it's just for the paint. So it's like a horseshoe.
It's it looks like you tried to draw Papa 2 from memory. And there's something weirdly animal about it. It looks kind of like a dog snout with the way the lines come, and the nose is really small. It's a very strange looking mask with a huge. All the shapes are way bigger than they normally would be. Google, if you're listening to this, Google a photo of Papa 2 Mexico, and there's videos of that whole show pretty much on YouTube. It's very strange, but the costume is very clearly just a black cassock. Can't really even tell what it is, or maybe it's just a black generic robe Halloween costume with the skull over it that has crucifixes embossed on it. And I do wonder if that was for something else. But the neck has this weird texture. I don't know if anyone notices that, but it looks like it has these like circular lines all the way around it.
It's almost like Hellraiser. It looks like a Cenobite outfit.
Yeah. Yep. It's very strange. And the ghouls look normal.
Yeah, you kind of can't fuck those up.
No. Yeah. I just keep thinking of something like it's just very interesting. You never see it again, obviously, for it. And, Tobias described it as one of the worst days of his life. And I feel for them all. But it's a very interesting thing. It's like it shows that they kept going. But it is a really weird look to where it's like if AI tried to draw Papa 2,
Yeah, oh God.
And it's like fuck AI, but it's what it looks like, it's like
fucked up.
Yeah, it's like somewhat recognizable as the character, but also not. It's like those off-brand Disney characters that show up to birthday parties, and it's like
Team Papa.
Kids, I'm Mickey Mouse. It's like fuck.
Hey kids, I'm Papa Emeritus II. It's like you are no Papa. Papa is Italian. Like what the fuck?
Yeah. This is like the first American Pope. This is like if we had an American Papa, it's just
doing like the worst fucking Sylvester Stallone Rocky. Hey yo, I'm Papa too, and
Papa Emeritus.
Papa Emeritus. We're here to knock your fucking socks off, buddy.
Yo, sister. We can have a whole
sister.
I did
it.
God. The show. Yeah.
Fucking Saltarian as Apollo Creed. Oh my God.
Yeah, dude, I'd love it. Yeah, I'm looking at another angle of this mask. It's so fucking weird because it looks like the teeth go all the way up the side of the mouth. Like I don't know what the fuck he was doing. And, I have to assume that Tobias painted this himself, in a rush job, like he did on the Papa 1 mask.
Yeah.
But had very clearly never painted the Papa mask, or maybe once to show what he wanted to look like. Because it's like, wow, it's something.
If I could go back into ghost history and interject my own idea, and not necessarily where it's like having a meeting with Tobias or anybody that's making these masks, but just put the bug in their ear. I would have loved, since we've kind of had variations of, these masks, especially with Papa 4 getting like a few different fucking designs. I would love to have seen a Nosferatu Papa from If You Have Ghost EP, like the look of that. I would love to have seen some kind of...
There's a replica you can buy.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, I would love to have seen...
on stage, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dude.
Yeah. Well, my point is, I see that replica that Scott Blake made, and I've seen people cosplay that, especially when that was still available, and I was just like, oh my God, why has that never been on stage?
Right.
That's another thing is we need a Nosferatu Papa. I don't know why we got one sort of with Nil when he first came out, but I would have loved for them to have leaned into with one of these characters. And we kind of do with V a little bit, but that voice and that, especially the 2024 Nosferatu, I get mad Papa Emeritus vibes of what I want Papa Emeritus to be, that just, and I want that,
Hell yeah, brother.
I think that'd be really cool. Hell yeah, brother. That'll always come back.
Yeah, that's kind of like
we need shirts that say "Hell yeah, brother."
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, GonstFM off here. Hell yeah, brother.
Yep. Hell yeah. But and then of course he gets the mask back after that, and he goes back to how it used to be. I do want to mention something here actually, because we're talking about costuming. There's this thing I see online a lot, which is people saying that he had red robes at one point. Not true. I see that a lot. There's a famous photo of him where the light reflects off of them and they look like purple or red, but that was actually, if you can date the photo, actually I have it right here, which is another Mexico show, I believe. It's not red. It's just the lighting and color correcting on that photo. But I've seen people say for a lot of times that he had a red variant that was used. And I've seen people say for a long time, especially on like TikTok and stuff, and like fun fact videos or like lore iceberg videos, that he had a red version. He did not. It was just those two.
Oh no, are we having?
We can just spell that.
Are we having a what is the dress color?
Oh, the dress color. Yeah. It's a blue, green, gold, or white and gold, or blue and black. Yeah. It's just like that. Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like lights play tricks on you. You know, kind of like how when the first show the Skeletor cycle happened, I saw a lot of people say he had a pink jacket, and then we learned it was a purple jacket, which made more sense. But it was like someone said hot punk, like Barbie pink jacket, and I was like, what? Yeah, that's something to spell there. But we really don't know much on these costumes.
Yeah, I mean, it's
who made them?
It's just a different color of the white robe and the 3-layered, crucifixes like going up and down the side of the robe and the center of the robe, and
classic, the green interior, and you associate it with him, right? Everyone now associates the color of the Papas, and that's the one you associate with him, and it's great. But yeah, there's not much to talk about in terms of this Papa, because it's just a great look. But there's, I would love to come on and give so much information that people don't know, but there isn't much. You can't find much.
No, and I think
it's cool.
Yeah, it is, and it also kind of lends itself, when we were talking about how popular this look is, to the fact that I think this is the only Papa that has an actual branded full-ass Halloween costume.
Yeah. Well, Cardinal did.
That's true. That's right.
But it was, still to your point, that was limited. You can find the Papa 2 costume in almost any Spirit Halloween.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. It's like, as a Papa.
It's like, yes, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's so iconic, and that costume's pretty good. I own it, and I also own multiple custom robes. I've been in cosplay and doing cosplaying for years, especially with Ghost, and it's pretty good replica. All things considered for the price, especially. But yeah, it's iconic. And we use it, like we talk about it. We talk about this, how iconic his design is for the Skeletor. People are dressed as Papa 2 everywhere. There was that great Papa 2 ice skating. Where was that? In Sweden.
For the hockey game. Yeah.
Yeah, the hockey game came out on the skates and in the Trick or Treat Studios, robes and masks, and then you had like Papa 2 showing up at like venues and arenas everywhere. It was just, and people thought Papa 2 was coming back, but I was telling people at the time, like, no, he's not coming back. It's just that it's the most easy costume to get because it's so iconic.
Ghost on Ice 2026. Make it happen.
I would be so down for that. If you could have like a full story arc, especially too, where it was like, or like just the ghouls come out and they're like, sliding on ice, and
how.
No, let's bring the bodies out. It's just all it is. They just like roll the bodies out.
The veneration of relics in the glass caskets.
Yeah. Then you just slide them. It's like down over the ice. They just play Dance Macabre and then just slide them around. They have a couple ghouls come out and just slide them on the ice back and forth.
I was gonna say, can you imagine how hard the pre-Kel era music would fuck on like ice capades, like that kind of shit, dude?
Oh yeah. Did you ever see that meme where it was like, it's the Disney on Ice meme, and they're like, it's a mom taking her kid to see Disney on Ice, but like it's false advertising because it's Walt Disney's body on ice. And she shows up. Yes. She's like, this isn't what I thought it was. Like, that's what I imagine. It's just like, it's like Ghosts on Ice, but it's all of them, all the Papas.
Yes.
It's just, you're just on the ice.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I would love to see like an 80s dance routine to like Dance Macabre.
Please.
And like Witch Image, like Ice Capade style with like costumes and stuff. That'd be awesome. You should, Mr. Ghost, please take our ideas.
Yes, Mr. Ghost.
We can pitch. Yeah, please listen to us. We have good ideas. The Nosferatu Papa and the Ghost on Ice.
Make it happen.
And if it doesn't work, we'll have GonstFM on Ice. We'll happen next year.
Yeah,
we'll put us. I can't skate, but it would be entertaining regardless.
I can't either. So
yeah, put us out there. Just play some music and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, just bust people our ass the whole time.
Yeah, I'd pay to see that. Yeah. I'm sure people would.
Let's see that on instant replay.
We'll try and do the podcast on the ice. Just trying to be talking about.
Oh my God, dude! Just
you and the next wall.
Yeah, you just whoop, just fucking hit the ground so goddamn hard. Son of a bitch. Yeah, so Papa Emeritus II, Wayne Toth effects. Dude,
yeah.
I love this era of Ghost a lot. I think probably for the actual simplicity of it all at the core, because Ghost only gets more gaudy and elaborate from here, and we will have so much more to really dive into and talk about from Papa Emeritus III onward, especially Papa Emeritus III with his costume changes and a couple of mask variations, especially what Papa 3 started out looking like before.
Yeah, and we can even talk about one that when we get into that, and we'll leave this as a little teaser there. We have a mask there that very few people have seen, and we'll leave it there. But there is a mask that everyone, I believe, has heard about. He comes off stage and he's wearing a different mask. There's one before it that was never seen in any official capacity, but there's one photograph of, and maybe we can post it on our socials or something when we release that. But there is that one mask that was never before seen and is out there because there was so much trial and error with that mask before they really get to an iconic design, which we'll talk about next week for sure, but is a iconic mask.
That's it.
So it really changes there.
And since we've been talking so much about masks and where you can, find different types of masks and sourcing and this stuff, Anthony, dude, we talk about GonstFam a lot here. We talk about the Station Head channel and everything, but for those of you out there listening, if you are getting into cosplay or you cosplay a lot and you'd like to join a community of Ghost cosplayers, Anthony, you run a Facebook group for that.
I do. I have a Facebook group called Ghost Cosplay. You can find it just under Ghost Cosplay. I actually ran the old Ghost Cosplay group, and we made this new one. We got almost 6,000 members in there, and they are all cosplayers, beginner cosplayers, professional cosplayers. We've got a great team of 4 admins in there who all have been either doing cosplay, or some of us have been, not me, but some other creators in there have been making, replicas, seamstresses who have made beautiful replicas of the Papa's robes and costumes, and, could make you a complete replica of the Papa Emeritus robes, or the suit. There is so much you can find there. So, if you're brand new to cosplay, or you've never started before, or maybe you've been doing it for a while, or you just want to get into it, or you're going to a ritual, you want to dress up as a Papa, we have exactly where to find all of the costumes, who can make you one, any information you need, just post and people will help you. It's a really great resource.
Yeah, I love this group, man. The people are so nice, so polite, and it's really cool because I send people there a lot when they're in my group, they're just like, oh, anybody know where to do this? I'm like, dude, Ghost Cosplay, go there. You will find it.
You'll find so many people there who you probably recognize from cosplayers on Instagram or, social medias or in the Right Here Right Now movie. And if you've ever wanted to ask anyone any questions on it, this is the place to go. And I'm biased, obviously, but I do believe that I've never seen anyone, there's no stupid questions, come in, where do I get a mask? Where do I do this? If you've never even touched anything and you want to get into wearing costumes and doing costuming, and cosplaying Ghost, this is the place to go. And in a couple of, hopefully relatively soon, we're working on it now. We'll have a full kind of master list of where to get everything for each costume in each era. Who's the best person who makes a Brickell mask? Ghoul mask? Who's the best person who makes a Cardinal mask? Who does the best replica, robes? And who's a trusted buyer? And who's a scammer? And all that. And we'll catalog all of that, so you can just go, basically, probably type in what you're looking for, and it'll give you all the links you need to do that costume. So it'll be really easy for people to get in because cosplay is for everyone.
For past, present, and future episodes of GonstFM Off Air, you can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. You can leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can leave us a rating and leave comments on individual episodes on Spotify. And if you're listening to this episode on our YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the bell for notifications for future episodes, leave a like on the video, or leave a comment down below. Any engagement helps. If you would like to attend a GonstFM Station Head ritual, if you would like to buy GonstFM merchandise, or if you would like to join Ghost Cosplay or the Facebook group for GonstFM, all this information can be found in our Linktree link in the show notes below. And so, our dearest Ghostlings, that brings today's episode to a close. Some of you we will see in Internet Land, and the rest of you we will see in GonstFam or Ghost Cosplay. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, until next time, in Gonst, we Tronst. I'm Papa X.
I'm Uncle Ghoul.
And we'll catch you next time.